Hey everyone, good morning. You know, it's no secret, us wildlife photographers are always looking for ways to improve the quality of our images or just the overall outcome of the pictures that we take. This is a topic that I've talked to so many people about over the years, both new photographers and more advanced, experienced photographers as well. And I'm constantly surprised at how many people hold strong to that idea that you need an expensive prime lens in order to get the best pictures. So in this week's video, I wanted to go over a few things to consider, a few reasons why your expensive prime lens might actually be hurting the pictures that you take or holding you back, hindering your growth as a wildlife photographer. Keep in mind that everybody's opinions and experiences are going to be different, so these are simply just a few things to consider, a few things from my own photography journey that I've learned over the years, a few reasons why those expensive prime lenses may actually be holding you back as a photographer. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Prime lenses certainly have their advantages. I'm not denying that at all. In fact, I'm saving up for a couple of prime lenses as we speak. This brings me to my first point, cost. You know, there's no denying it. Prime lenses are expensive. You can buy a new car for the cost of some prime lenses, and for most of us, that'll take years of saving in order to finally have enough money to buy that prime lens that we may want. Alternatively, you can buy a cheaper zoom lens for a fraction of the cost. So now you may be asking yourself, okay, how does this actually hurt my photography? I did an experiment. I added up all of the costs for my traveling last year, all of the costs for my photography. This includes plane tickets, any gas for my vehicle, food costs, any hotels that I may have stayed at, and all of those costs put together was still less than it would cost to buy a 500mm prime lens. In fact, I had enough left over to cover an additional 4 months of photography costs. This means if I would have invested in that prime lens that I want rather than in my actual photography, I wouldn't have had nearly a year and a half of content that I've shared with you here on this channel. And personally, I'll take the wildlife and the experiences over that expensive prime lens. And again, personally, the zoom lens that I've been using has done just fine. Next, let's talk about one of the biggest disadvantages you'll face while using a prime lens, the inability to zoom out. Yes, we all love those extremely close-up images that you can achieve with many prime lenses. Well, what do you do when the animal comes closer? People will just tell you, oh, just take a step back or switch your lens out for another one. If you think either of those options are going to be easily applied to your photography, especially if there's some sort of action happening with the subject that you're photographing, I hate to break it to you, but you're in for some major disappointment. Last fall, while photographing great gray owls, there were periods of time when the owl would just sit on its perch and scan the surrounding forest. I was able to easily zoom in and get close-up portraits of the beautiful owl. Suddenly, he would burst into action, taking off from his perch to hunt or move to a better vantage point. I was able to quickly and easily zoom out and get my desired images without clipping wings, feet, or just missing the opportunity altogether. The same applies to almost every species that I spend time with and photograph. Next, let's talk weight and size. Generally speaking, prime lenses are less compact and weigh more than zoom lenses. For someone like me who focuses mainly on photographing backcountry wildlife, this is a huge thing to consider. When you're hiking miles and miles each day in search of wildlife to photograph, sometimes for multiple days or even weeks at a time, weight adds up quickly, and size will limit the amount of other gear you can take with you. Ultimately, this affects how much wildlife you're actually able to access and photograph. And even for the photographer that doesn't do my preferred type of photography, just carrying a heavy and bulky prime lens over the span of a few hundred yards can quickly become uncomfortable and tiring. Because prime lenses are larger and heavier, this usually means that you're also carrying a tripod with you. If you've ever maneuvered through a forest or a field of sagebrush with a tripod and a large prime lens, you know that this can feel like trying to maneuver through an obstacle course. You can always opt out of carrying a tripod with you, but honestly, I doubt even He-Man could go very long trying to steadily hand hold a large prime lens. Now again, please don't get me wrong. The intent of this video is not to tell you that prime lenses are awful or to not get one. Like I mentioned before, I'm currently saving up for one myself. But just like any tool, prime lenses have their time and their place. I simply wanted to give you a few things to consider, or a few examples or scenarios of when a prime lens might not be the best tool for the job. I also wanted to show you that you certainly don't need a prime lens to get great photos or to improve your photography. I would love to hear from you. I love learning together, so please let us know down in the comments in which scenarios you would prefer to use one type of lens over another. And stay tuned for a few weeks from now. I'll be coming out with a similar video, but just the opposite of when I would prefer to use a prime lens over a zoom lens and some of the benefits of using prime lenses. Until then, stay safe. I'll be right back at you next week with another fun wildlife adventure. Have fun out there. We'll see you next time.